Folks, one of the challenges that we have in running, and it's arguably a small challenge, is that different terms mean different things to different people. So you can't always compare apples to apples. Today I thought I'd talk a little bit about your lactate threshold runs versus tempo runs, because people tend to use those terms interchangeably. You may or may not be able to use them interchangeably. It depends upon how things are being defined. So what commonly might happen is somebody might say, well, my tempo runs are always only about 25 minutes long, but my friend is doing tempo runs that are 60 minutes long. Shouldn't I be doing what my friend is doing and be doing these longer tempo runs? Well, I will tell you that in this particular situation, chances are the definition of tempo is being used differently. So let's take a step back and talk about lactic acid, lactate, hydrogen ions. The reason I put the hydrogen ions down there is I think most people have heard of lactate or lactic acid, and they know that, hey, when I produce that too fast, I'm going to bonk. It's actually the hydrogen ions that are causing you a problem. It's not the lactic acid or the lactate itself. It's the hydrogen ions. You don't really need to know that. But what you need to know is you're producing lactate all the time. As you're sitting here watching this video, you're producing lactate. It's just in a really, really small amount. Your body can use it as fuel and just kind of gets burned off right away. Your lactate threshold is what pace you can run at where you start to produce it faster than you can burn it off. And that means after a period in time, it's going to cause you to bonk. And it's those hydrogen ions that make you bonk. So your lactate threshold pace is one that you could hold for about an hour. Some people are a little less, some people a little more, but on average it's about an hour when you're rested and peaked. In other words, you can't in the middle of a training week just go out and pound out an hour at your lactate threshold. You have to be rested and peaked to get that. And again, it's about an hour. Some people a little more, some people a little bit less. As I said before, that means when you hit that threshold, you're producing the lactate, which causes the hydrogen ions, faster than you can burn it off, and your pace at lactate threshold is a key indicator in how fast you're going to be able to run at just about every race distance. Now in training, lactate threshold runs are typically 20 to 30 minutes of steady running. There are times when you might do steady running a little bit longer than that, but in general, they're only going to be about 20 to 30 minutes long is how long those will be. So does tempo equal lactate threshold? Well, the answer is maybe. I mean, it might. That gets back into the definition of terms. So I think a lot of people are familiar with McRun, which is Greg McMillan's calculator. So if you use McRun and you put your race times in, he's going to tell you that your tempo pace is, let's say, 7 minutes, like I used before. He gives you a range. He'd say more like 7 minutes to, say, 6:50. For McMillan, tempo and lactate threshold mean the exact same thing. He uses those as the same thing. So if he says you're doing a tempo run, it's at your lactate threshold. If he says you're doing a lactate threshold run, it's a tempo run. They're the same. But other people use it differently. I'm not trying to say Greg is right or wrong, just different people have different things. For example, if you look at a Hal Higdon plan, you will see that the way he uses tempo is not the same as lactate threshold. In his definition, he does have you doing some lactate threshold running within the tempo run, but his tempo runs tend to be a lot longer than that 20 to 30 minutes. Why? Because they're not all being run at that lactate threshold. So again, as I said, it's not important to know which is right, which is wrong. There is no right or wrong, but understanding what kind of run you're doing, understanding your terms, helps you better understand your training, and maybe helps you avoid that comparison trap when somebody else says, well, I'm doing this. Well, are they really doing the same thing?